Good morning. Not loud. Good morning. Hello, I can't see everybody because I've never been in front of a spotlight before, but I can see some. We're gonna have to move this along pretty quick. You know how these things work with conferences; they always run behind a little bit, so we're not an exception to the rule. So, but the first thing we want to do is we had a presenter that had been accepted and was going to present from. Where is he? Oh, there he is. From Hostos, and unfortunately, she passed away. So we just want to say a few words and get a moment of silence about that. So I'll bring up Carlos from Hostos, and he'll say a few words about that.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It was really sad news. We were really sad to hear that Professor Caroline Johnson, who is an assistant professor from the Allied Health Nursing Department at Hostos, passed away a few days ago. So we want to honor her by having a minute of silence. If we can all have a minute of silence, please. Thank you very much.
What I want to do is, our president's here. She's going to do a lot of the acknowledgments for a lot of the people that was involved in this. I'm just going to run through a couple of things that a few people that we forgot to mention inside the program. I just want to go through that quickly. But first, I just want to say the outstanding committee up here, and there'll be more detail about them later, that have been working with me and Mark for quite a long time, and every year we always manage to pull this thing together, and I don't know how we do it. It's not just us, there's a whole bunch of people that I mentioned, so if you can just kind of give them a round of applause for putting this together. And I'm not leaving out their names deliberately, so I see some people's faces like, is he going to mention their names? You'll hear that shortly, their names. So the staff, all of the staff people that you see around, we have volunteers from our campus, we have volunteers from Hostos and volunteers from Lehman. All of these people helped us pull this thing together. We started meeting back in December to plan this event, and we still don't feel like we're ready. So, but there's all of the people that you see around, the people at the registration desk, on your way out, going to the breakout rooms, if you can kind of, thank them for, helping you out. All of the people that were involved in getting the signs printed, all of that stuff. It's not just us. There's an army of people that helped to put this thing together. So why don't we just kind of give them a round of applause right now, to all the people that helped. In the program, there's a lot of acknowledgments in there. Of course, you always forget a few people. One I want to mention is the, and I forgot already what was it? Mark don't remember either. He's like, what are you talking about? Was the, oh God, I forgot. The communications office. We want to give them a shout out because they really helped us with printing out some signs and different things like that for us and organizing that. They didn't get mentioned in this, so I wanted to do that, right? So let's move on here. Housekeeping. They're going to abandon me now, but that's okay. All right, so let's go through some of the things quickly. There is a live streaming on YouTube. It's on the conference website. So right now, Richard over there, Martinez, is running the camera. We're actually streaming live on the web. We sent it out to a lot of people, so there's a lot of people watching right now. So if you haven't seen the signs, I'm letting you know now. If you want to, kind of get out of the way of the camera, you can do that. But also remember that in the afternoon, when we have sessions here and the raffle, all of those things will be broadcast live and recorded. So we want to let you guys know about that. Also in the breakout rooms, no live broadcast, but they will be recording. And we'll archive it later. So just to give you a heads up about that. Cell phones. Please turn off your cell phones, because if you don't, Richard gets very uncomfortable when cell phones are going off in his recordings because he can't edit cell phones ringing out of the videos. And trust me, he will lean over to you and say, please turn your cell phone off. So make sure they're off. I just made sure mine was off and it was on. Glad it was. Okay. Unfortunately, we can't have food or drinks inside the playhouse. Okay? So please help us out with that. Otherwise, we may not be able to use this space again. We were very lucky and fortunate to work with a lot of the offices on campus to get this space. So please, let's try to follow their rules so we can use it again, hopefully in the future. Lunch, if you made it up to 211 this morning for the breakfast, that's where lunch will be. And also next to 211, there's a terrace. Hopefully the weather will work for us. Then you'll be able to sit out on the terrace and have lunch. If not, there'll be additional seating up there on the second floor where you can go to sit. Okay, so did everyone find breakfast this morning okay? Yeah? You can be honest, it's okay. It's all right. It'll help us to plan better next year. And that's at 1 o'clock. The wireless login information is on back of your badge, so if you haven't seen it yet and you're looking for it, if you look on the back, our guys put together these little stickers and they stuck it on the back of your badge. So if you need to get in to the wireless guest account, it's all there, ready for you. Surveys. We'll have surveys at the end for the sessions that will be in this room, and we'll also have them for the breakout rooms. Please, if you can, we need those because those will help us to better plan next year. Any problems or anything that you ran into, not only just problems, but you can tell us some good stuff too that we did. We definitely need that, and we appreciate your feedback on that. And if you forget and you walk away with it, you can always give it to any one of us that have these, staff badges on. Okay? The raffle drawing. I'm not going to run down all of the prizes, but you can see them inside. I think they're in the program, Carlos, right? Allison, they're in the program, right? Some great prizes we have this year. You have to be here to win the prize. How we're going to do is when you come in later on this afternoon, we will collect you can give us your badge, we'll put it in, and we'll call out the name, but you have to be here in order to win. If you're like me, in my office, I have about 1,000 badges hanging up on a board. I'm just sentimental like that. I like to keep my badges and know where I went. If you want your badge at the end, you can come up to the front and, you can get it out the box. Okay? Any questions about the badge part? Okay. The other thing I want to mention, and Allison whispered this in my ear, and watch, I'll forget everything that she just told me, but I'm going to do the best I can. She's sitting right there, so she'll be able to help me out. We changed the format this year a little bit. It's kind of these 15-minute sessions inside of the room, so it'll be like 3 15-minute presentations in the room. We kind of changed it to kind of a lightning session. We want to get as much feedback and interactivity as possible from you guys with the presenters in the room. So, Allison, did I hit it? Okay, good. Okay. I think we are... Okay, so now I'm going to bring up... oh, he's over there. He doesn't know what I'm about to say. He just thought I was going to tell him to come up here, and he's about to introduce our president. But Mark Lennerton is the director of the CTLT. He came to us back in September, and it was a kind of a change in leadership, someone new from outside the campus. All of the staff here, all of the guys that are here, we didn't know what to expect. And as it turns out, Mark has been outstanding. We've had no problems with him. He's leading us as well as anyone else could. He'd asked me to kind of bump up my position as assistant director and work with him, and that's been working out very well. And I just want to give you a shout out, Mark, and say thanks for, for being you. Okay? So, Mark Lennington, director of CTLT. Thanks, guys.
Part of that was just because I write his review, I'm sure. I'm going to make a command decision, partly because we're running a little bit late. So the morning sessions, concurrent session 1 and 2, will all slide 10 minutes. We'll try to give that extra time back to George because we sort of stole it from him. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you, and I also want to introduce the leadership from our 3 campuses, our Bronx campuses. First up is our president from Bronx Community College, Dr. Carol Barot-Joseph.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bronx Community College. How many of you are here for the first time? Oh, wonderful. So you are on a nationally designated historic landmark campus. We are the only community college in the country to have that designation, and that only happened last year. So I take special pride in welcoming you to Bronx Community College, and I too hope that the weather will clear up a little bit so that you have a chance to walk around. To those of you who I have not met personally, my name is Carol Barot-Joseph, and I welcome all of you to the 2014 Bronx CUNY EdTech Showcase. It's a mouthful. It's a real pleasure, though, to do that because the 3 colleges in the Bronx are really very special. I don't know if any of you knew, but I spent 22 years at City College of New York as a faculty member. And then I spent 5 years as vice president of academic affairs and provost at Otte Community College. So the Bronx, it's like coming back home. So I'm really very happy to be here at Bronx Community College. And then to have our keynote speaker today be George Otte, who's a person I knew way back when in CUNY, who was English professor, ESL professor, and all of that. So it was wonderful. Welcome, George, to have you here as keynote. So as I like to say, our siblings, our Bronx siblings who are co-creators of this signature event, Otte Community College and Lehman College have a special place in my heart because we've been collaborating really for over 3 decades. When we gather together like this, we instantly multiply the talent pool to the benefit of all of us and the students we serve. Sometime in the prehistoric past, a wise elder taught a lesson to a circle of eager young people by picking up a stick and drawing in the sand. That was the beginning of EdTech. We've come quite a long way, but the principles of education technology remain the same. The technology itself doesn't do the teaching, of course, you do. But in the hands of a teacher with the knowledge and inspiration to use it well, EdTech can be a very powerful classroom tool that clarifies, communicates, and stimulates. In a short while, we will hear the keynote address from Dr. George Otte, CUNY's University Director of Academic Technology. His topic, the problems of innovation, will set the theme for an exciting day of discovery. That'll be followed by dozens of workshops, panels, demonstrations on everything from online education to social media to game-based learning. Think of this as a buffet for your brain. Here you will get an understanding of EdTech far beyond anything you'll read in the user's manuals. But as you're taking advantage of these wonderful opportunities to perfect your craft as educators, don't overlook one special source of wisdom, namely the person next to you in this room. How about turning around and saying hello to the person next to you? Your colleagues. Your colleagues are a valuable resource, as you are to them. A little later, you'll share your experiences with educational technology, during lunch, when you're walking the corridors, hopefully of our North Hall and Library. If you haven't been in it, I invite you to go. Reuniting during the rifle drawing that will close out the day. This can be a day of profoundly productive collaboration. I wish all of you the best of luck in your explorations over the next few hours. I do want to take a few minutes because, as we all know, in order to do these things, there have to be some people, who work to make these events a reality. So I'd like to have the Bronx EdTech Showcase Steering Committee stand. They include Albert Robinson, who opened for us here today, Assistant Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning and Technology, Bronx Community College, Allison Vogel, Associate Director of the Office of Online Education at Lehman, Carlos Guevara, Director of Educational Technology at Ostos Community College, Elizabeth Tappenair, Faculty Liaison to EdTech from the Ostos Community College Library, Kate Lyons, the Liaison to EdTech from Ostos Community College, and our own Mark Lennerton, Director of our CTLT. In addition, so let's give them a round of applause. I know we also have in the audience members from our IT department, and they definitely have been a big help here, so I'd like them to stand if they're in the house. All the IT departments, in fact, because I know Ostos, Lehman, all of you work together. And our own communications staff and the duplicating staff, who probably are not here, from BCC and from Ostos. So thank you to all of you for making this a reality. And now I'd like to welcome our partner in crime from Lehman College, and that is Ron, who is the CIO at Lehman. So again, welcome to Bronx and have a great day.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Ron Bergman, CIO and Vice President for Information Technology at Lehman, and I want to welcome you on behalf of Lehman and on behalf of President Ricardo Fernandez, who couldn't be here today. He is providing remarks to the CUNY Service Corps, which is having a CUNY-wide meeting at Lehman. He hopes to come later and sit in some of the workshops. This is a wonderful collaboration, and I just want to applaud all of you who are here, who are participating in this, and recognize the unique collaboration that's happening here. There's no other set of campuses in any other borough that's doing this. Is that correct? So I think that the spirit of innovation, the idea of engaging students and having this sharing of ideas, as the President said, is wonderful. I also want to say that I am not one of the newbies here on this campus. I grew up in Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan, and my brother came here to NYU, uptown. So I was here when I was 7 years old, playing on campus, and my parents wouldn't let him go and live anywhere else. He had to live at home. So if you haven't, if there's a chance today, I just want to add to your comments, Madam President, about going to the Walk of Fame and to the new library in particular. Those would be my recommendations if you were reading my Zagat guide about this wonderful, wonderful campus. So thank you very much for opening this campus to this community. How many of you are from the 3 colleges in the Bronx? Could you raise your hand? Most of you, okay. I think that that's very significant. And how many of you are from the rest of CUNY? There's quite a few. That's fabulous. Just a few acknowledgments. We could give them a round of applause. 20, okay. A couple of acknowledgments. First, I want to acknowledge James Haggard, who's here, who is the Deputy CIO for the university. And James, can you stand up? There he is. Thank you, James. James and I were talking over coffee this morning, and he's bringing a tremendous amount of innovation to the infrastructure going forward, and that's something that we need that will support us tremendously. The other thing is having just another round of applause for the group that put this together. So why don't we just acknowledge them one more time. I want to talk for a moment about the students that are about to enter college, those students that were born in the mid-90s. As those of you, if you were like me, you ran out in the mid-90s to get your first Palm Pilot. You were using Windows 95. Two people just met at Stanford. Larry Page was at 22 years old, was a graduate from the University of Michigan. And when he came to Stanford to look around, the person who brought him around the campus on a tour was Sergey Brin. And what happened? What did they create? Google. The next year, Google, the domain was registered. Another thing that happened in '95, for those of you who are into this, is that eBay was formed. And the first item sold on eBay, which was simply just a trial, was a broken laser pointer. And you know how much it sold for? About $14.66. So it's amazing how these serendipitous events create amazing changes in technology. So the world is getting and has gotten more volatile, uncertain, and complex. I don't have to tell you about the importance of your work, especially in light of the changes in higher ed, and in terms of the fact that we're having these enormous problems economically, socially, and around the world. And so these digital natives the true digital natives are about to enter college. They're starting at community colleges and will hopefully go forward in their careers, in jobs, and also some of them will be at colleges like Lehman and other senior colleges around, after they graduate, around CUNY. But the fact of the matter is that these students have grown up in the world of social media, in the world of cloud computing, and in the world of intense gaming environments. And so their expectations are higher. What they expect at college, what they expect in the workplace are going to be interfaces that really haven't been invented yet. And they're going to be contributing to that. They will be an extraordinary generation. You are entrusted with bringing their skills to an even higher level, but I think we can expect great things from them. They will challenge us, and I think that with collaborations like this and the innovation that you're creating, we're going to meet that challenge. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'm pleased now to introduce the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Ostos Community College, Carmen Caballas Vega. Thank you.
So live streaming of this event, I think you better be very cautious. I can see some interesting scenarios when we have the raffle at the end of the day to the come on down for your prize. So do pay attention because this is being live streamed. And who knew that this was possible? We are living in such an incredible age that it just floors me all the time. I bring you greetings from our president, Felix Matos Rodriguez, who could not be here today to greet you, and from all the faculty, staff, and students at Ostos Community College. Several of them are here today, and we're really delighted about that. I am especially pleased that we have such competent, caring, and very interesting faculty and staff and administrators who help support the work that we do at Ostos Community College. And you'll see some of that in the presentations today. But I'm especially delighted about the students who are sharing some of their work, because I think it's very important for our students to share out the kinds of things that they're doing in the classroom with their faculty, and things that will really propel them, I think, forward in the future. And you are all contributors to that. So I really do appreciate that, because we are about learning, and we are about our students, and ensuring that they get a leg up as they finish their work with us and move on. And I know that I'll share one short thing. It was my daughter who put me on Facebook. about 3 years ago. She said, "Mommy, you have to get on Facebook. You're missing so much." And she was absolutely right, because through Facebook, I connected with the high school students that I taught back in the 70s. And that was just such a delight to find out where they were and so on. And I've been able to do a few other things through Facebook. And I remember my first laser printer as a chair cost me $4,000. That tells you something. So enjoy the day. We're so glad you're here, and it's so nice to see a good representation of faculty and staff from other campuses within CUNY. That is the strength of CUNY, that we all together can share our expertise and our knowledge. And I'm so delighted to have George with us today, because he and I commiserate many times at some meetings that we go to about the need to move forward some of these agendas. So thank you so much.
Again, folks, I'd like to thank the leadership for speaking on our behalf and welcoming you. Let's give them a hand, please. I'd now like to call up Dr. Stephen Powers from Bronx Community College to introduce George Otte.
Thank you, Mark. Albert told me I only have 45 minutes to introduce George. I don't know if that'll be enough time to cover everything that George does, has done, or probably will do in the next hour or so. I met George probably right after he went into his current title. I was part of a cohort of faculty that was sent to learn how to teach online. And that is something that has continued for me. I now mentor faculty who are going to be teaching online. I work with George in several different areas. George's official title that he gave us for the presentation today is University Director of Academic Technology. And I think it really comes more to directly responsible for everything, especially when it breaks. George has been and is an English professor, and I think that is where his roots remain. He is student-centered, and when you're sitting in administration, I think sometimes you can lose the sight of the students, and George, I do not believe, has ever done that. The students are the focus of what he does and what I believe we do on the various committees I serve with him on, and what we try to do at each of the colleges, not just the 3 Bronx campuses, but all 23 elements of CUNY. So, without a long, because I really can't be this nice this long, it starts to get to me after a while. When I saw George this morning, I said, "Is there anything you want me to say?" And he said, "Don't be mean." So with that said, I have cut my remarks exactly to, ladies and gentlemen, George Otte, University Director of Instructional Technology.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I was going to begin by trying to explain the title of my presentation, but are you going to turn the other mic off? Whoops. Man, what did I just do?
It's one of the problems of innovation.
I'm not a PC user. That's my problem here. Yeah, please. Get me back to that. But it was mentioned that I'm University Director of Academic Technology. What is that? And I can tell you what it's not. I get contacted probably by almost as many vendors as James Haggard does. And so I have a template in my email. In order to get back to them, I say, you're confusing me with somebody who has staff and a budget. Okay. So I have neither. I go around and sort of cheerlead. And I did want to say just a few words at the beginning about the what I'm talking about, because nobody wants to hear anybody talk about their problems. And as you will shortly see, these problems are actually your problems. But I think it's better to acknowledge that, first of all, you are not the problem. You're the innovators, but the problems with innovation are not with the innovators. On the contrary. And if we're going to get some steps, and I hope we do, towards some solutions, then we have to begin with a certain amount of problem definition. So that's my excuse. I want to begin with that. I don't want to end with that. I just described you as innovators. If you think for a moment about how much you would like to feel noticed and supported and acknowledged, and how much you are noticed and supported and acknowledged, you may get a sense of what you might call the problematics of innovation. So that's what I'm going to talk about at the beginning. So the problem with, or problems, plural, with innovation can be traced to a larger institutional problem. The reasons that innovation typically doesn't get adequately supported, and even if it does, doesn't take hold more often than not, are also the reasons that institutions of higher education are notoriously slow to change. Now, I just described sort of a huge and incredibly complicated situation. I want to acknowledge that I'm going to be doing some radical simplification. A hero of mine, Terry Eagleton, has said that without reductive thinking, thought itself is not possible. So this is going to be an exercise in reductionism to some extent. But I began, when I was thinking about this talk, and I don't know how well you can see this, and maybe I could zoom just a little bit more, with a little mind map where I was talking about, to myself, the tensions between innovation on the one hand and resource management on the other. And resource management is very, very important. I want to acknowledge that. But they function in different ways. And I'm not going to go on a blow-by-blow of the diagram here, but basically what we're talking about is that innovation is centrifugal, and resource management is centripetal. It pulls things together. Innovation is dispersed, distributed. It happens at the edges and the fringes. It's sometimes disruptive, which is a word we've heard a lot more lately than we have in the not-so-recent past. Resource management is organized hierarchically. It's about control. And more than that, it's about responsibility. This is the place where audits happen. This is the place where money is managed. And it does not happen easily and without a lot of careful monitoring and care taken. Anybody try to get a purchase requisition through lately? You know what I'm talking about, all right? So there's nothing probably really revelatory about the fact that ideas and money don't flow the same way. But it's useful, I think, to realize that I'm not demonizing anything. I'm describing a problem that is really constructed around a set of tensions, and more than anything else, about differently located and motivated behaviors. So if we're going to get any further with this, we have to think about why. And I'm just crossing out all the other journalistic questions. We're not going to analyze the situation with who, what, where, when, how. That way lies the blame game, or actually despair and apathy, and a real tendency to get lost in the weeds. We really need to think about why. That's the question. And the answer, in a word, and it's not the game of global domination, but that was a good GIF, so I used it, is risk. Innovation and resource management respond to risk in very, very different ways. Innovation is, by definition, risk-taking. It's experimental. It's about the testing of hypotheses. It's about the right to fail. And revise, and retry. Resource management, good resource management is effectively risk management. It's basically what it is. Don't blow it, especially if it is money. So, what I want you to think about for a moment, because this is for me, the game changer, is what happens when risk avoidance becomes risky. Because I think that's where we are now. So, I probably should have gotten a better version of, I don't know how well you can see this picture. And I feel like, but I didn't, no wait, I have a laser pointer. There we go. Look at that. Okay, I forgot about that. So I think the most important thing is to notice that this is a 100-year-old picture. This is about 1914. This is not about 2014. And in 1914, the road to happiness was safety first. By the way, this is actually about education. There was the, I don't know if that's a river or just a path, but ignorance is going underneath the bridge of education, and beyond that leads safety first. So playing it safe, apparently, was the way to happiness, the road to happiness in 2014. Well, that was a Freudian slip. In 1914. In 2014, it's the opposite. I think the one thing that we can talk about at this point in time is that the riskiest thing you can do is to sit on your hands and do nothing and try to play it safe. We've been seeing a lot of not playing it safe. We've been seeing a lot of throwing pasta on the wall and seeing if it sticks, basically. And everybody's been aware of that. And as a matter of fact, that is one way we sort of proceed through not so much innovations as an attempt to ratchet them up or make money on them or make them bigger and revolutionary. So we've heard about talk of campus tsunamis. We've heard talk about revolutionizing higher ed with things like massive open online courses and other forms of disruption, competency-based credit, the kind of thing that Western Governors does, or the Southern New Hampshire University, corporate partnerships. 2U, if you remember, was an attempt to create a kind of online collaboration through a corporation. Same guys who ran Princeton Review for all of the small liberal arts colleges. It failed after about a year. So there's been a lot of that. And if you've been reading the news, you know about that. What's fascinating to me is that one of the sources for funding some of this stuff, throwing pasta against the wall and seeing what sticks, the Gates Foundation, Dan Greenstein of the Gates Foundation, coined the term innovation exhaustion to describe what was going on. And he said specifically, it comes out of an obvious and growing frustration with MOOCs. This is actually something he said over a year ago. So this is not news. And it is, what you're seeing is an attempt on the part of institutions specifically, and also venture capitalists, to disseminate innovation, make it much bigger than it had been. I want to argue that this is not really innovation, not as I'm thinking of it, but the attempt to scale it up significantly. If you think about it in an interesting way, MOOCs are sort of the invention of the printing press in our time. They're a way of extending and the duplication, scaling of, and access to content. Content is not education, but it can masquerade as such. So, what do we really need to do? I'm not by the way, a huge Steve Jobs fan. I read the biography. If you read the biography, you know all the reasons not to like Steve as well as the reasons to like Steve. But what fascinated me when I was thinking about this was that, and it stuck in my head, it was one of the things that was pulled out over and over again in the obits and the testimonials after his passing, was what he said in a Time magazine interview: the way we're going to survive is to innovate our way out of this. And I think this is what you're seeing when you're seeing a lot of work with MOOCs and other quote-unquote innovations. Now, it's important to remember, I think Ron was helping us with this, to remember how much, not just technology, but the user experience of technology, and consequently the world itself, has changed, that in 2002, we were talking about the dawn of the iPod, the first release of iTunes, OS 10, the iPhone, the iPad, iOS. All those things came later. All those things we probably can't, I know I can't, think about doing without now. Were not around then. And many of them were not imagined by anyone on the horizon. Steve Jobs helped with that. You may remember how often he said Apple would never do a tablet. I'm working off of one right now. And so I want to sort of invite you imaginatively to think back to that point for Apple. He had just, come back to the company. He had, they'd let him go. He hadn't done that well. Does anybody remember Next? Actually, almost no one remembers Next, and that was part of the problem. It was a non-hit. Apple was in a situation that's not radically different from the situation that higher ed is in now. Higher ed is in bad shape. Funding is increasingly depleting, especially public funding, but also philanthropic funding. Student debt is just ridiculous. We can't squeeze the students for more money. And I'm talking about higher ed generally, and certainly not the CUNY students specifically, whom we might squeeze for more money. We've got downturning enrollments. I think everybody knows this. The echo boom, the baby boom of the baby boomers is over, and we probably won't see increasing enrollments again from traditional sources until the year like 2020, some say 2025. We're not getting better at completion. We're not getting better at world rankings, if you know where the U.S. fits. The job market is changing a lot faster than institutions of higher ed. And nothing's changing faster than technology. So we really do need to sort of think about innovation. The interesting thing for me then is that what really makes it work? Not what makes it happen, because it happens with or without the proper resourcing and funding and so on. It happens because people like Sergey bump into people like Larry, and it happens. Mark Zuckerberg, for those of you who've seen the movie, which is more or less accurate. Those things sort of pop up, but then what happens? And the interesting thing from Curtis Carlson, who's the CEO of SRI. SRI is one of those acronyms that doesn't stand for anything anymore, but it used to stand for Stanford Research Institute, says that, and this is his law, that because everybody has the access to the knowledge and the tools, innovation from the top down tends to be orderly but dumb. That was some of what I was talking about before. Innovation from the bottom up tends to be chaotic but smart. And so there's a sweet spot somewhere, and it's moving down closer and closer to where the people are, to where you are, to where the innovators are. Because now they have the means, the tools and the knowledge to invent and collaborate. So, what is the not too high, not too low Goldilocks point for this? I did a couple other mind maps I don't want to spend a lot of, time on. But you might think of what we want from innovation on the one hand and resource management on the other in terms of rights and benefits, or if, like me, you're spending a lot of time with middle states documentation, you could think of it in terms of goals and outcomes. But there are places where these things overlap and are mutually beneficial. That resource management needs innovation, especially now, the way innovation needs resource management. As a matter of fact, they're like to use that old-time song, love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. You need somebody to pull it and something to put it in. One of the things that occurs to me is the metaphor of the plant that needs water to grow and the watering can. Without that plant, the watering can has no reason for existence, but that plant, that sprout at least, needs to be noticed, unless we're talking about a soaking of the landscape. And remember, in this metaphor, this very complicated, distended metaphor, the water is money. Nobody's going to soak the landscape. So we have to be able to find and identify and then support what look to be likely points of innovation. And the key then, it seems to me, is visibility. How does innovation get recognized? Get recognized as worthy of support, get recognized as worthy of scaling up, ideally. I've got a couple of examples, but I want to look first at Carlson's Law again. I think it's important to remember, especially if you understood me to say innovation is just one of those things that happens. There's somebody off in a corner, a light bulb goes off. Innovation happens to the extent it does now. And it's one of the things that's speeding things up so much because the tools have changed, and especially the tools for collaboration. Innovation really doesn't happen in terms of moments of individual inspiration. What really needs to happen is collaboration. And that's the critical corollary to Carlson's Law, that the more people can collaborate, the more innovation you're likely to have. So, we have spaces for collaboration. I hope you're all familiar with the CUNY Academic Commons. It's not just a space, it's an example. I know at least a few people in the room remember when there was no Commons. It wasn't released until 2009. And even some of those people might remember when there was no funding, but there was an idea. I still get teased about this because I coined the phrase, if you build it, they will fund. And they did. But by the time the funding arrived, people may remember this, we not only had a developer team that had put together a beta platform, we had 100 people at least, actually I think it was hundreds of people, in that beta banging away at it, making sure it worked, making suggestions for how it might be better. It now has close to 6,000 members. I hope it gets a lot more in the not too distant future. I'm not sure that that's the model, but it's a model of how collaboration needs to happen. It, in some cases, is a matter of building the plane and flying it at the same time. It's of creating the space in which you're going to innovate. And maybe that's one of the things CUNY has to do. This afternoon, I understand from the program, you're going to listen to a lightning round of people who are into gaming. The most powerful, or arguably, I don't want to offend anybody, one of the most important groups on the Commons, one of the largest and most active, is the gaming group, the CUNY Games Network. And they are amazing, but one of the most amazing things about them is if you know about gaming, you know you need all kinds of skill sets in people. You need people who know design, you need people who know a lot about pedagogy, you know people who can program, and yes, you need gamers. And they need to find each other. And they found each other on the Commons in that open group. And put together, I have to say, one of the best conferences I've been at. It was this January at the Graduate Center. I think I was 30 years older than anybody else on the concourse level. But they were amazing. And they had found each other, and to a considerable extent this is true of this conference, the conference itself was built through collaboration that happened online with tools that had heretofore not been available and are available now on the Commons. So, I could say a lot more about the Commons, but I need to go on. I want to call your attention to something else which is a little less well known. The CUNY Innovation Survey. This is the brainchild of another group on the Commons, and there are some members here, the IDT, Innovative and Disruptive Technologies Group. And they wanted to use innovative and disruptive technologies, but they needed to make sense of how much we're doing that now, and began an inventory, which works through collaboration, or works through self-reporting. So I've given, and if you want to jot it down, you could, during the boring parts of this conference, maybe the last 10 minutes of this talk, you could fill out the form with whatever you're presenting on today. It's a bit.ly shortener, so it's always the same, the first part. The second part, PUD, all uppercase, QB, lowercase, uppercase B. PUD, QB, or something. That's all you need to remember, and you can find this. At this point in time, we have well over 100 innovations reported in the survey. We have every campus represented, some campuses more represented than others. What we'd like to do is surface this information, not least of all for the administration, and suggest to them that some of this stuff is worth getting much bigger about. I think one of the fascinating things about this is if you browse through this, you see that there are possibilities. I think one of the things we're always sort of worried about is that we're going to be reinventing the wheel. So one of the biggest projects in here, our project types represented, is ePortfolio. We are not reinventing the wheel. We are finding, we are letting 1,000 flowers bloom, and they're very different uses, different platforms, different purposes, different levels and kinds of instruction that are involved. There's a lot to learn from. There's a lot to find out about what one another are doing, and this is a means of doing this. I know I need to wind up. Logical next steps, it seems to me. These are not yet taken because they need to happen well above my pay grade. But there are signs, let me say that and no more than that. There are signs that there may be some interest in doing this sort of thing. What we would like is to create a structure for people to make proposals that could be funded. And if I seem to be describing a grant, I'm not. Grants, in a way, are part of the problem. They're ephemeral funding, and they contribute to the ephemerality of innovations. The grant funding runs out, and so does the enthusiasm for pursuing that particular path or approach. What we would really like to be able to see is people doing more of what they're doing now, coming up with ideas they would like to try out, and finding ways of getting support for that from the get-go, and finding ways of making the connections and collaborations that would help them not only realize that innovation, but scale it up. Opportunities for mentoring, both doing it and having it done unto you. There is a lot of expertise, growing expertise in CUNY. We need to find ways of making more of that. I'll conclude by leaving you with a way of contacting me, which I also hope is familiar to you. If you're on the Commons, this is one of the features, and it's just the top. It's the banner for the new CUNY profile, and you can put and mine is, your bio underneath, and your list of publications, and links, and interests, and and all sorts of stuff, images. But the interesting thing about developing something like this is that we've all put one another in reach of one another. And the single most interesting thing, and it's probably something you can't see very well because of the color scheme, is the particular URL shortener that we're using. CUNY.is/your name here. So this one says George Otte. That's not an act of hubris. That's quite the opposite. CUNY is everybody who says CUNY is me, as far as I'm concerned. There are already hundreds of people using this as a way of connecting back to their means of contact, their publications, their links, and so on. May there soon be thousands. It seems to me that ultimately what we're talking about is what CUNY is, and CUNY is, collaboratively, all of us. That's the thought I'd like to leave you with a couple others. One is, I've been involved in this for a long time. Technology is in my title. Innovation is not technology, it's people. That's what you need to fund. And the solution is not a hierarchy, it's a network. Thank you. Do we have any time for questions?
A couple of questions?
Yeah.
Anybody have a question for George?
Stunned you into silence? There's a microphone there.
There's a lot of energy in this room.
Yeah.
And, sorry, once a
That's
year.
proof right there.
No, there you go.
Static electricity, too.
Coming out of my leg. I just wanted to say, I think that we do tend to try and take these conferences as a one day off, and you know, we get excited. And I think the idea of having so many things all at once was so that people get a taste of it and recognize this is about you finding it, knowing where it is. And that's why we're trying to materialize something that's unconferencey in a sense, because now we have to get people to talk fast, 15 minutes, do the hard sell. So I just wanted to point out to people that that's what this is supposed to be thinking about, and that in the future that we will develop the projects online. We'll figure out a bigger way to have that connection with CUNY, with some of the plans that are happening. And just to say thanks for being that person who leads us in this way, because it's a very exciting thing to come once a month and meet with everybody. And
Thank you, Allison. One of the things she's pointing out is one of the things that's much on my mind. There's a hand up back there. I think we've all had this experience. You go to a conference, whether it's away or here in CUNY, and you come back and your brain's on fire, and 2 days later you can't remember what it was. You're back in the same old, same old. And I think the challenge here, especially if you're going to have these sort of lightning exposures, is to keep it going somehow. To this end, one of the things I promise I will do, because I do have a blog, who doesn't these days, is I will put the slides up and the script up for this talk and the references, so if anybody wants to read more about Carlson's Law or what Dan Greenstein said about innovation exhaustion, they can find that. But there ought to be a way today of not just hearing what one another is saying, but there being a lot of trading of, business cards, email addresses, so that this can be kept going. Yes. Yeah, there was a question back there.
Hi, my name is Sarah Brennan. I'm from Hostos Community College, and I found the Carlson's law interesting, and I've been reading a little bit about the privatization of the internet and information that's out there, and I really see the internet as being this opportunity for people to collaborate in ways that they haven't been able to be before. Do you have any thoughts about this idea of privatizing information, making it harder maybe for people to connect with each other or access information that they have right now that maybe they won't be able to access in the future, as being kind of a hindrance to innovation?
Yeah, I do. And I'll try to be really brief. My experience with technology is that we're constantly given these either-or choices, and as people pointed out, I was an English professor in another life. Either or, most English professors will know right away, leads you right to false disjunction. It's a logical fallacy that gives you just two choices and makes you assume that that's it. Technology is almost never that. Technology is almost always a both-and. If you think of all the technologies that have happened and all the sources for those technologies, you realize over and over again that other things don't go away, that video doesn't replace movies, that they developed a strained symbiotic parasitic relationship. And the same, I would have to say, is true, this is my reading of your question, for open source, open access on the one hand, and the privatized on the other. I think you have to be involved in that, especially with what's happened to net neutrality in the last week or so. But the open source technologies, if you know them, have really matured. The Commons is all open source. Open source, open access, Creative Commons license. It's not the way we do everything in the university, but it's the way we do some very important things. I think you have to be involved. I think the more you know, and better yet, the more you use technologies like this, the more weight you throw behind them. But I also acknowledge that a lot of this stuff doesn't get done unless corporations get involved. We rely on vendors to some extent, no less than we rely on our own devices and resources to build all this stuff for ourselves. The enormous complication here is now that so much of this doesn't happen. The technology that happens in the Bronx isn't in the Bronx, it's in the cloud to a considerable extent, which may mean it's in a server farm in Utah or something. And I think we have to some extent, pay the piper, but to a greater extent, find out what the alternatives and tools are and make those available first to ourselves and then to our students. Okay.
Again, I want to thank George Otte for that keynote speech. Well, I'm looking at the clock, and the second command decision will be, let's start the concurrent sessions at 11:15. 11:15. Everything will slide in the morning by 15 minutes. That means we're going to change the menu for lunch. We're going to be eating duck. We're going to duck in, we're going to duck out. To go to the concurrent sessions, straight out this way, across the street, there'll be some people there to help you out. Bathrooms are over there, and over in the new library, and enjoy. Mic to the moderator.